Congresswoman Omar, her anti-Semitic comments that have gone forward. We're not going to allow her to be on foreign affairs.
But I will not be like Democrats and play politics with these, where they removed Republicans from committees and all committees.
Kevin McCarthy's purely partisan move to strip us from our committee is not only a political stunt, but also a blow to the integrity of our democratic institution and threat to our national security. It is not the accusations that McCarthy is making against us that is pushing for our removal from these committees. It is about revenge. It's about appeasing the former president.
Our nation's welfare programs continue to trap Americans in a perpetual state of dependency on government assistance. These programs are allowing too many able-bodied adults to sit at home, resulting in major workforce shortages and driving costs up for businesses. The culture of dependence must be replaced with the culture of self-sufficiency and personal responsibility.
We need to restore the dignity of work and the work ethic in this country, not just because it's a fiscal matter, because it's good for people to use their God-given talents to contribute to our great country.
The idea that because somebody is on a government program, that they are going to stay on a government program forever is not something that exists. There are many countries around the world who provide government assistance where people are not constantly on welfare. We have to provide the bootstraps if we are saying people need to pull themselves up.
I didn't come to Congress to be silent. I came to Congress to be their voice. And my leadership and voice will not be diminished if I am not on this committee for one term. My voice will get louder and stronger, and my leadership will be celebrated around the world as it has been. So take your vote or not. I am here to stay, and I am here to be a voice against harms around the world and advocate for a better world.
President Biden and my friends across the aisle want to continue to exceed America's credit card limit without any consideration of how or why we got here.
Since the first day of the administration, this Biden administration has recklessly spent taxpayers' dollar, and as a result, as I say, you see inflation at record highs, stealing money and opportunities from hardworking Americans.
The three main pillars of this legislation will benefit hardworking Americans by limiting federal spending, saving taxpayer dollars, and growing the economy.
Overnight, they dreamt up a dangerous economic bill that will plunge families into economic depression. Republicans say they want to grow the economy, but their bill will destroy 8,000 jobs in my district alone and 7 million across this country. They say they want to invest in children, but this bill eliminates childcare access for 4,000 kids in my state and 180,000 nationwide.
Student loan forgiveness is nothing more than a transfer of wealth from those who willingly took on debt to those who did not or had the grit to pay off their loans. For 2 years, President Biden has attempted to push a free college agenda through radical regulations, including income-driven repayment, executive actions like blanket cancellation, and his permanent pause on repayment.
Some of my colleagues on the other side are fine with accepting millions of dollars in PPP loan forgiveness for themselves and are always ready to bail out corporations, but draw the line at providing financial relief to individuals struggling with student loan debt. If you can get past the shock of how cruel this is and ask why, you will see the answer is to simply score political points and nothing more.
What Republicans are doing right now is playing stupid games. They are not actually negotiating. They are holding every American hostage while they threatened to wipe out people's savings, take away millions of jobs, and plunge the world economy into depression. If you are not worried about your country's Speaker McCarthy, maybe you can at least care about your own constituents.
There's a lot of awful stuff in this budget. There are millions of vulnerable children, moms, and dads, and more who will literally have Medicaid taken from them. There are massive cuts to food assistance, literally starving families who are already struggling with food prices. There is the totally kooky math, which as the $1 trillion they claim to save from improper payments, even though every expert will tell you this is bogus. But what is most sickening is that they entirely leave in place the Trump and Bush tax cuts to benefit them and their friends, which have cost over $10 trillion and are responsible for almost all of the increasing debt ratio. Permanently extending the Trump tax giveaway would benefit households in the richest 1% more than twice as much as those in the bottom 6% as a share of their income, providing roughly $41,000 tax cut for the top 1% at a cost of around $300 billion per year. This is on top of handouts to millionaires and billionaires already receiving from the permanent provisions of the Trump tax cuts. Republicans have been gunning for our seats and obviously know how effective that we have been in upholding the Constitution, in defending our democracy, in standing up to extremists. In modern American history, the punishment of stripping a member of Congress of their committee assignments has been reserved for only the most egregious wrongdoings, those convicted or indicted on corruption, those who have engaged in bribery, sexual misconduct, encouraged violence, or other grave charges.
Kevin McCarthy is handing out House committee assignments, and Marjorie Taylor Greene just landed a big one.
Two of the party's far-right lawmakers, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar, were assigned to a key House committee.
I believe that white men are the most persecuted identity in America.
Not only do we need to impeach Merrick Garland, we need to clean out the corrupt FBI, we need to hold the Democrats accountable and defund all of their climate garbage.
We need to stop the invasion that's happening. It's an invasion, a daily invasion. It needs to end.
If McCarthy wants to denigrate the integrity of the House and its committees, we will always stand up to these efforts. You remember the speech Leader Hoyer made with an image of a rifle being held to my head and the head of other colleagues. We've all seen the video that Representative Paul Gosar made of killing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Speaker Pelosi, and President Biden. Many Republicans stood up and defended those members and their ability to continue to serve on committees even after they threatened the lives of their colleagues. Now, if those same members want the American people to believe that while they defended those acts, that they should not defend us to continue to serve, then it is going to show their hypocrisy. I hope that many of these Republicans will have conscience and will not prove to their constituents and the American people just how much of partisan hacks they are, how much hypocrisy that they have, and show themselves to be a disgrace.
This debate today, it's about who gets to be an American. What opinions do we have to be counted as Americans? This is what this debate is about, Madam Speaker. There is this idea that you are a suspect if you are an immigrant, or if you are from certain parts of the world, or a certain skin tone, or a Muslim. It is no accident that members of the Republican Party accused the first Black president, Barack Obama, of being a secret Muslim. It is no accident that former President Donald Trump led a birther movement that falsely claimed he was born in Kenya, because to them, falsely labeling the first and only president of the United States of America a Muslim and African immigrant somehow made him less American. Well, I am Muslim. I am an immigrant, and interestingly, from Africa. Is anyone surprised that I am being targeted? Is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy? Or that they see me as a powerful voice that needs to be silenced? Frankly, it is expected, because when you push power, power pushes back. Representation matters. Continuing to expand our ideas of who is American and who can partake in the American experiment is a good thing. I am an American who was sent here, by her constituents to represent them in Congress, a refugee who survived the horrors of a civil war, someone who spent her childhood in a refugee camp, someone who knows what it means to have a shot at a better life here in the United States, and someone who believes in the American dream and the American possibility and the promise and the ability to participate in the democratic process. That is what this debate is about. There is an idea out there that I do not have objective decision making because of who I am, where I come from, and my perspective. But I reject that. We say there is nothing objective about policymaking. We all inject our perspective, our point of views, our lived experiences, and the voices of our constituents. That's what democracy is about. So what is the work of the Foreign Affairs Committee? It is not to co-sign the stated foreign policy of whatever administration is in power. It's about oversight. It's to critique and to advocate for a better path forward. But most importantly, it is to make the myth that American foreign policy is intrinsically moral a reality. So I will continue to speak up because representation matters. I will continue to speak up for little kids who wonder who's speaking up for them. I will continue to speak up for families around the world who are seeking justice, whether they are displaced in refugee camps or they are hiding under their beds somewhere like I was, waiting for the bullets to stop. Because this child, survivor of war, would have wanted that. The 9-year-old me would be disappointed if I didn't talk about the victims of conflict, those that are experiencing unjust wars, atrocities, ethnic cleansing, occupation, or displacement like I did. They are looking to the international community and the United States, asking for help. They look to us because the international community and the United States profess the values of protecting human rights and upholding international law. So we owe it to them not to make this a myth, but a reality. I didn't come to Congress to be silent. I came to Congress to be their voice. And my leadership and voice will not be diminished. For a long time, Republicans spent so much time saying they were going to address the economic anxiety families were feeling, but overnight they dreamt up a dangerous economic bill that will plunge families into economic depression. They talk nonstop about rail safety, yet in this bill, it would cut at least 160 rail inspection days in Minnesota and cut 7,000 inspections nationwide. They are not repealing the Bush-Trump tax cuts because what their bill is going to do is do wealth transfer from working and middle-class families to billionaires and millionaires. This is hypocrisy and is full of lies. Corporations should not be put ahead of our families.
Texas.
Thank you, Chairman. My amendment will restore the 2024 appropriation funding to the funding levels agreed to in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, protecting vital economic security programs. This budget resolution would lead to dangerous cuts for social safety programming that millions of our constituents rely on to meet their basic needs. Mandatory spending for income security programs, including SNAP and TANF, would be slashed by nearly $1 trillion under this budget framework. The Women, Infant, and Children program, which provides nutrition assistance to 5 million women and children, would be cut by $800 million. House Republicans would also cripple new affordable housing development under this proposal. Funding for home investment partnership programs would be cut by nearly 70%, resulting in 20,000 view homes being constructed or renovated in communities across the country. These cuts would increase housing costs further by eliminating funding for housing choice vouchers for 20,000 households, including approximately 6,000 households headed by seniors. The added cruelty of these implicit cuts is the timing. The United States is grappling with a rising food insecurity and poverty rates as the positive impacts of past economic support, like the enhanced child tax credit, have faded. We are also dealing with affordable housing shortage. This is only getting worse in this high interest rate environment. And yet Republicans are determined to force deep cuts to programs that help keep people fed and safely housed right before the winter during these hunger and housing crises. My amendment would ensure that Congress does not leave countless Americans out in the cold without enough food to feed their families. If you care about your constituents' livelihoods and well-being, you should vote for this amendment.
As a nation, we must break this cycle and return our welfare system to its original purpose as a temporary, I repeat, temporary safety net for those truly in need, not a final destination for able-bodied Americans who refuse to work. Let's end with a question on my part here. Tell me government programs that actually create the environment of a hand up, not a hand out.
I believe the people of this country are dignified people. No one stands in line to get food unless they need it. No one goes through the rigorous humiliation that it takes for you to apply for welfare programs. Dignity is within people. What we are talking about is the work that we have to do here in government to try to support those who need it. I also know that there are countless members on this committee and in Congress who have had the support of government programs, who are now wealthy and well off. We have to provide the bootstraps if we are saying people need to pull themselves up. It is no secret that student loan debt has become an overwhelming burden on millions of Americans, preventing them from achieving their dreams, hindering their ability to contribute to our economy. I am so disappointed to see the efforts from my Republican colleagues to use the CRA to attack millions of workers and families with student debt. They also like to falsely claim that student debt relief will merely pay off the debt of the elite. But the truth is, President Biden's debt relief program was designed to provide much-needed relief to most economically vulnerable borrowers, with more than 90% of student debt relief going to borrowers earning below $75,000 per year. That includes more than 75,000 constituents in Chairwoman Foxx's district who are eligible for student debt relief. 77,000 constituents in Chair Owen's district, and almost 97,000 constituents in Representative Stefanik's district, and over 40 million eligible constituents across the country that would benefit from debt relief, half of which have already been fully approved for discharge but are in limbo because of politically motivated efforts by the Republicans. Since the beginning of the payment pause, which began under the Trump administration and has had bipartisan congressional support up until recently, millions of borrowers have been able to use the monthly savings to keep food on the table and roof over their heads during the pandemic. But perhaps the cruelest piece of this proposal is the one that would retroactively overturn the 7th payment pause. This would not only force borrowers back into repayment, but resulting in thousands of dollars in payments and accumulated interest added back onto their balances. The cruelty is the point. The reality is that payment pause has been critical economic lifeline for tens of millions of borrowers. Public service workers have been able to accrue credit towards forgiveness under PSLF. This proposal will also claw back progress made and reinstate loans that have been canceled over this time frame. These are the same nurses, educators, service members, and hundreds of thousands of other public service workers across the country who have been called our heroes over the course of this pandemic. This is how my Republican colleagues want to pay them back. The fact is that student loan borrowers and their families should not be used as a political pawn. Congress should be acting to improve the circumstances of the American people, not attempting to thwart the president's efforts. Let us stand up for the tens of thousands of federal student loan borrowers and their families who would be affected by student debt. Vote no on this resolution. I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm truly shocked that we're having this hearing today. Not only was the budget resolution due on April 15th, but we're in the midst of a shutdown crisis because Republicans can't even organize their own caucus to pass funding levels that we already agreed to. And now they launch some of the most radical cuts to healthcare, to housing assistance, to food assistance, to the postal office, and nearly every program under the sun, all while doing nothing to rein in our nearly $1 trillion Pentagon budget or the trillions they have handed out to millionaires and billionaires through the Trump tax cuts. On top of that, they defund enforcement of high-earning tax cheats. In his opening remarks, the chairman even said, "We don't need an army of IRS agents." Well, guess what, Chairman? Increasing tax enforcements would raise over $1 trillion over the next decade, according to the most recent research. So you have to ask, who stands to benefit from all of this? Well, it turns out millionaires look out for one another. It's the Republican members of this committee, at least 9 of whom are millionaires, according to the latest data from Open Secrets. That includes Buddy Carter, who has vocally pushed to slash Medicaid and take away health care from his constituents, who himself is worth $33 million. And it includes Ralph Norman, one of the most extreme advocates for taking away food assistance from working people, who's worth whopping $43 million. In his opening remarks, the chairman said, "There's a difference between the president's priority and ours." He is right. President Biden is worried about taking care of the country. The president is about making sure the economy works for everyone, that kids have enough food to eat, and that millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share. As Humphrey once said, the moral test of government is how it treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the aged, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. Clearly, Republican colleagues are failing that test. Thank you, and I yield back.